Nathaniel Lee is who you want by your side in the courtroom. You've seen the rest, now hire the best. Contact Lee, Cosell, and Fiegley today. And now, to address the legal concerns of the community, Praise AM 1310, 95.1 FM presents Legally Speaking. Here are today's hosts.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Praise the Lord. We've made it through another wintry week. Record cold. I have my super top star panel today, Attorney Anita Banks, Masters in Tax, a cybersecurity expert, Marlon Primes, a federal U.S. attorney for most of his professional career. So I have some really good experts today. But I start today on a sad note before we get started in the main program. We witnessed the killing of two individuals, Alex Pretty and Renee Nicole in Minneapolis, Minnesota. But it made me look at this a little bit more carefully. In 2025, 32 folks died in ICE custody. 32. In 2026, in the month of January alone, there's been 8 deaths involving ICE. 8. On January 5th, they killed Luis Gustavio Nunez Caceres. He was an immigrant from the Honduras. Geraldo Lunas Campos, January 3rd, a Cuban immigrant. Victor Manuel Diaz, a Nicaraguan immigrant. Priority Law, a Pennsylvania man. Of course, Renee Nicole Good was shot. We witnessed that horrific scene on TV for a week, saturated, and everybody know her name. Luis Beltran Cruz in California. Then and Herbert Sanchez Dominguez, 34-year-old, died in Georgia. And of course, the one that really captivated America, Alex Pretty, an intensive care unit nurse from Veterans Hospital, was shot multiple times in the back. It played out on TV, and it caused America to reassess this more than any of the other shootings. There were so many cameras that was fixated on this shooting. It was very unsettling to see a person murdered in the street and shot in the back. Very disturbing. But that's where we start, Marlon, Vanita, this, because now we see that the ICE operation moving from Chicago to Indianapolis, and with a lot of baggage, a lot of concerns. But in any event, that's where we are, and now we're in unsettling time, particularly Marlon, from your whole department, Department of Justice. I saw something unprecedented this week. They went down to Atlanta to pull voting records from the 2020 election. And I was thinking, that's bizarre. I thought the election was a state issue.
It really is a local issue. And good morning, everyone, Attorney Lee and Attorney Banks and your audience, Nathaniel. Hope everyone's staying warm as we have winter advisors all over the country. Yeah, but this is very unusual in terms of what's going on in Atlanta. You're absolutely right. Elections are a state and local function, and for the federal government to go in there and seize voting materials is really troubling. And also it's troubling if you put it in a couple of different contexts. Number one, there have been more than 60 courts that litigated issues as relates to the 2020 presidential election and found that there was no impropriety. They did not sustain many of the claims being made by the current administration. And so if that's not bad enough, then after that, you have, a lot of the activity that took place in terms of, calling the Secretary of State in Georgia to find, more than 11,000 votes. And everyone knows that's certainly problematic. So And now there's kind of almost a histrionics as it relates to those particular issues because there was a recent hearing where there was an independent prosecutor that was hired, and he basically indicated that he had enough evidence, he thought, to secure an indictment. So if you look at it in that context, it's really troubling. No one knows what's going to happen to these materials. Are there going to be, nefarious activities? So it's certainly problematic. The one good thing that we'll have to watch out for is that local authorities in Fulton County, Georgia, have indicated that they're going to vigorously fight. So I anticipate that there will be, legal activity to really figure out what's going on and get to the bottom of it. The final point that I'll make is that your audience may remember Tulsi Gabbard, who ran for president, and now she became the director of national intelligence. And that was an entity that was created in the aftermath of 9/11 because it was thought that a number of the federal intelligence agencies weren't communicating with one another. And so your audience should be very concerned that according to many press reports, Tassie Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, was there when these voting materials were being seized. And that raises a lot of questions if you look at it in the context of what happened in the Church Commission, the abuses of the FBI and the CIA, and she's not supposed to be involved in these domestic activities. And there are a lot of, articles online really, expressing great deal of alarm that this is, far outside of her bandwidth and, something that could, indeed cause abuse. So very concerning times indeed.
Attorney Banks, you're you have a brilliant mayor there in Chicago. So ICE is leaving your city, coming to ours.
Now, when you mentioned earlier, Attorney Lee, Chicago, and good morning, everyone. I hope everybody is staying safe and warm with this brutal weather across our nation. Of course, I follow Indianapolis weather, Attorney Lee, and you've gotten even more snow and ice and cold weather and below zero temperatures than even Chicago. And so you intentionally stated that ICE has left Chicago and has moved to Indianapolis.
They our governor, Miami Correctional Institute, if you Google that, he is opening it up for them to store the ICE arrestees, I guess. And so, and he would get paid a handsome fee, of course, by the agency for housing folks. And there was reported earlier this week that they were moving into the Marriott Hotel here in Indianapolis. And it raised a lot of concerns about, last night I saw that Ryan Mears, they were on TV, he and Congressman talking about that. I didn't attend it because it's been too cold for me, but it's a lot of concern because we've witnessed with our own eyes such tragic shootings of American citizens. And so, it did raise a lot of concerns.
Well, I'm glad that you called the names of some U.S. citizens that names are not called in the mainstream media. You're absolutely right, of course, that we have seen, and this has been, January has really been a month of terror on the American people. And we have seen, as you stated, in addition to the deaths of Keith Porter Jr., who um, was a who is a black man who was killed on New Year's Eve, and Renee Good and Alex Preedy, that there have been 32 deaths of immigrants in ICE custody in 2025. And that, we also saw the arrest just yesterday of Don Lemon. And we're witnessing the deplorable Texas detention centers that are serving, you know, as a prison for children. And we'll talk about 5-year-old Liam Ramos in his little blue bunny cap that, as a result of being detained at a Texas detention facility, that members of the U.S. Congress visited just this week, including Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. She observed the children were, including uh, Liam, depressed. She observed um, deplorable conditions, including they took a test of the water there, and that the children, some of the children are listless. Um, Little Liam is, you know, begging for his mother. He's asking for his bunny hat and his backpack. All have been taken, you know, away from him. And so the last 30 days has just been devastating. But we've seen citizens across this nation, including Indianapolis, Attorney Lee in Minneapolis, Chicago, and across this nation, stepping up in response to these attacks on our democracy, the Constitution, and the rule of law. You know, as you know, last week we were on the radio show, we were just seeing breaking news that Alex Preedy had been killed by ICE officers and we witnessed excessive force in that shooting of an ICU nurse. We witnessed him being shot 10 times with our own eyes for helping um, his neighbor. And so we're seeing the occupation of urban cities across the nation, and we're seeing citizens step up across this country to say that enough is enough. And so there's a lot happening, a lot for us to continue to unpack on this show today.
Well, what I learned, counselors, is very important. Minnesota is doing something extraordinary in terms of how this is playing out. They're fighting back with their cameras and a whistle. And so, what amazed me is the Alex Preddick murder. I've seen what about 7 different views now. It's a bunch of different, and we don't have the body camera footage or anything like that. But man, it's just extraordinary to me the awareness of the citizens to record evidence. We saw that in the George Floyd murder situation, but now we're seeing a up front and center uh, recording of crimes. But if the citizens were not conducting recordings, if this was not seen so many times, the graphic detail of the murder, it would not be the same public outrage because nobody knows about the other folks that died. And so the power of the camera and social media and TV is just extraordinary because now people are aware of what is going on. So I say to all those folks out there, if you see something, instead of saying something, record it, blow the whistle, and make sure you collect evidence and post it online immediately. And keep doing that because that's the only way I think that there's our own defense now because it's not like you can go out and outshoot them. They got heavy weapons and stuff like that. You'll be dead. But and then we find out with the Alex Preddick case that even lawful gun owners get murdered just apparently for carrying a gun on him that he never used on anyone. So don't forget that.
I would also ask that all the lawyers that are listening today, that it's time for the legal community to step up and volunteer to serve as legal monitors of the protests that are uh, occurring across the nation, and also step up to represent protesters that are arrested at the various protests as they are engaging in their First Amendment free speech rights in this country as well. Attorneys can hold press conferences and use your platforms as we're doing to inform um, the people of what's happening in our nation, and also to support the Black independent media, and that includes Black radio shows um, as other forms of independent press. Attorney Lee, you mentioned the attack on the Fulton County voting office this week, and we saw the FBI descend, and Attorney Primes, you referenced Tulsi Gabbard, who's the director of national intelligence that has no authority in this matter. She showed up in Fulton County as the FBI seized voting records, the 2020 voting records from that office. And as Attorney Prime stated, over 60 courts across this nation, including judges that had been appointed by the Biden as well as the Trump administration, have ruled in no uncertain terms that there was no massive fraud in the 2020 election. And the administration has continued to stoke this conspiracy theory that that the president won the 2020 election. And that is very, very dangerous.
Okay, we have a caller on the line. Imhotep, you had a question or comment for us today, sir. Go ahead.
Good morning to great guests, Brother Nate Primes, Attorney Banks. You set that up very well. I hadn't gotten to that as far as content I've been making lately and getting a lot of engagement on my YouTube and other pages. But Donald Trump lost Fulton County by almost 300,000 votes. Biden got 79% of the vote. It's not even close. We're not talking about a difference of 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000 or even 10,000. He lost by almost 300,000. So I can't understand. Even everything they do is illogical. We know that, but that just defies serious logic. They lost it by 300,000 votes. There's no plus or minus margin you can even account for. So I don't know what they're doing. I think it's to attack another majority Black area, majority Black district, and try to instoke fear. Attorneys, my issue, I'm going to the full city council meeting here, Nate, Monday to talk about snow removal and trash removal. But next Thursday, I will be at the Public Safety Committee meeting. I think they'll be swearing in probably, I think, the new chief then. But when it's question time, I want to answer to the policy on listening to Donald Trump. Donald Trump made one of the most dangerous statements Monday or Tuesday was made by Monday after the Alex Preddy shooting. And let's give credit. Let's give attention to Mr. Keith Porter too, out there in Los Angeles, who was killed on New Year's Eve on his porch. Black man sitting on his porch by an off-duty ICE officer. That's gaining some traction now. I think some Black lawyers out there is taking on that charge. And I think the lawyers that took on Preddy's case are doing it pro bono. But Donald Trump said you can't carry a gun. You can't carry a gun in public. That is contrary to the Bruen decision. I went through and read through the Heller decision thoroughly. I went through and read through the Bruen decision thoroughly. I went through and read through the Rahimi decision thoroughly. They got a case in Hawaii right now that Pam Bondi, Justice Department, has done front of the court briefs on, fighting the state of Hawaii, because the state of Hawaii has a ban on guns on private property, and they're fighting against that, saying that that's a violation of the Second Amendment. So going to the Bruin decision was concrete about carrying guns in public. Said anybody that passes a background check has a right to carry a gun anywhere in public. Matter of fact, Clarence Thomas wrote in the opinion, one of the opinions, that the police, the sheer fact of you carrying a weapon does not rise to reasonable suspicion or probable cause for the police to even stop you. Now that's in the Bruin decision. So for Trump to make this statement, well, you can't carry a gun in public, he's not law. He doesn't make law. And I didn't hear anybody in the media, anyone, I think Don Lemon was getting to that, but I didn't hear anybody of any substance when they were questioning Noam and Bongino before he left, and President Trump about the Supreme Court being the law of the land, and the fact the Bruin decision is what opened this Pandora's box. And your words can't go against law. See, so that's why I was told by Attorney Roger Bohannon to ask the city of Annapolis what is their policy, because I'm a card carrying. I mean, I have a permit so I can get reciprocity because I travel a lot, so I want to make sure I get reciprocity, even though you don't have to have a permit in the state. But I travel a lot, so I keep a permit so I can get reciprocity. But the fact remains that we need to know what policies are in these cities. Are they listening to this? Are local police departments listening to this? Because the Bruin decision is the law of the land as we speak. And our mainstream media is terrible. They're terrible. None of them mentioned this while they were throwing this diatribe about, well, he shouldn't have been carrying, or you can't carry in public. That's not what the law is. And so it's really dangerous. First Amendment, we already know. The Fourth Amendment's been under attack too. But remember, the Supreme Court said that ICE had the authority to racial profile. That's a violation of your Fourth Amendment right there. So we are really under attack. But if you can speak to the danger. You open it, the Supreme Court said public, you can carry in public. And now we have the administration saying, well, you can't carry in public. They don't make law. And I think we already see problems with police shootings increase even after George Floyd. Police killings increase after George Floyd. So it's dangerous. And we need to make sure that the local and everybody on the level understand they don't make law. And Bruin decision is the law of the land. So I just want to hear your thoughts about that, and thank you for taking my call.
Oh, Marlon or Panay, you want to take
You're
a stab?
absolutely right that the Bruin decision is the law of the land. It was decided in 2022. The Supreme Court in a 6-3 decision struck down a New York law requiring, quote, proper cause for concealed carry licenses, establishing that the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to carry a gun for self-defense in public. And Attorney Lee, I'm sure that Indiana, right, has a, conceal and carry? Or in Indiana, do you even have to conceal? And so in response to those dangerous statements that were made this week by the administration, we've seen the NRA largely reject those contentions that, one, you cannot bring a gun to a protest, and that the penalty for that can be execution at the hands of ICE officials.
Well, Attorney Banks, one of the things you brought up earlier too is that moving forward, Don Lemon, what happened to a well-known TV on CNN? Now does his own program nationally. He's a reporter. What happened to Don Lemon?
Yeah, that's just a tragedy. And your audience should kind of look at the sequencing of events. First of all, we have a situation where the U.S. Attorney's Office, Department of Justice, where I worked before retiring and going to my present position, went to a federal magistrate judge in Minnesota, and the judge indicated that he was not going to issue an arrest warrant. And then the Department of Justice took the unusual step, and the federal district court judge even noted it. He says, in more than 40 years of experience in this courthouse, they've never seen where the department has appealed a magistrate's decision not to issue an arrest warrant. So then you have the chief judge, Judge Schultz of that federal district, you know, indicated after reviewing the evidence that Don Lemon and others did not commit any crimes, which is devastating. And then, according to press reports, there was an attempt to take this to the federal appellate court, and a appellate court panel also rejected the arrest warrant. And so, in normal times, that would stop any Department of Justice from pursuing further charges because you have, someone independent, making a determination that there's not enough evidence. And what's even more troubling, Nathaniel and Attorney Banks, in your audience, is that the chief judge of the district court in Minnesota, clerk for Antonin Scalia, Justice Antonin Scalia, and was very well noted as a conservative, and he basically indicated that there was no evidence. So that didn't deter the department. Then they went ahead and went to a grand jury, and as your audience may have heard, the saying that the government can indict a ham sandwich, got an indictment against Don Lemon, and I think it goes to your earlier point, Nathaniel, about the really importance of videotaping and documenting. That's the best way during this time period to make sure that rights are protected. And so it turns out that Don Lemon and others, posted videos of what he did, and it was, very contrary to the narrative that the government was putting forth. He was not, part of this protest inside the church, which I don't think is appropriate. But nevertheless, he does have a First Amendment right. He was acting as a journalist and even said on the tape that he's just covering it as a journalist. So to have him arrested, and not only on top of that, the prosecutor asked for him to be incarcerated, have his travel limited, asked for there to be $100,000 bond. And again, that was rejected by another federal district court. So just very unusual. And then the final thing I'll say is that, juxtapose this just for a minute, that, there's an indictment of a journalist, a respected journalist for, essentially, if we look at the videotape, just, covering the news, and you juxtapose that to, there's no indictments as it relates to what happened to, Mr. Preddy and the shooting. And just recently, the Department of Justice turned tail and previously said they weren't going to investigate. Now DOJ is investigating, but they haven't moved in terms of an arrest warrant or an indictment. So that certainly is deeply troubling.
Wow.
And we saw or heard about 24 officers arresting Don Lemon. Now, did you need 24 officers arresting Don Lemon, attempting to intimidate him while he's in Los Angeles covering the Grammys? And we also saw other Black members of the press incarcerated as well. I think only Black members of the press were arrested. And Attorney Primes has stated that all week DOJ attempted to get a warrant for these press members' arrest and were told no because there was no probable cause. And then finally they were able to obtain this grand jury indictment, 14-page indictment, which really blurs the line between participating as an activist, which many of the individuals in the church were doing. And let me just say, I think that the protests within the church, that strategies was probably ill-conceived. Um, but in no uncertain terms, would the press be prohibited and be called part of the protest as opposed to what the press was doing, which was covering the protest inside the church. And again, thank God for cameras and videos that show journalist Lemon covering the protest inside the church, asking questions of the pastor and the members, not uh, obstructing the entrance of the church, which he was alleged to have been doing. And again, we're witnessing an unprecedented attack on the First Amendment, freedom of the press. And as Attorney Prime stated, the DOJ um, purported to take his passport, to limit Don Lemon's travel to only Minnesota and New York. But ultimately, he was released on his own recognizance. And um, thank goodness for that. But what we witness in this situation is really a chilling effect on the freedom of the press that is totally unacceptable.
Okay, we have a caller. Caller, you have a question or comment for us today. Go ahead.
Yes, this is Guy. Can you hear me?
Yes, Guy.
I think that it's pretty much obvious to the most casual observers what's going on in terms of the federal government. And I think that the Attorney Banks, when she called for the members of the legal profession to step up, I think that's great because, you know, we can talk about things. My father used to say, don't talk me to death. You know, we can talk and talk and talk, but we've got to become active and get involved. And it's not just the legal profession. I think professionals and workers, whatever they do, tradesmen, it's time to really step up and get involved. And so I was glad to hear Attorney Banks call for that. But, you know, we have a situation, and it's not anything new, really. I mean, it's kind of startling in a way to those that haven't been through it before, but it's nothing new. You know, when Thurgood Marshall was in his prime, the conditions were much worse than they are now, right? People have to step up and do. They have to. In my opinion, they can't lay back in the cut, so to speak. They have to step up and do what's necessary. When soldiers came back from World War I, World War II, black soldiers, they had to fight even to carry weapons at some point. So there's always been a struggle, but as many of our great civil rights leaders used to say, you know, without struggle, there's no progress. So that's all I want to say. We have to get involved and we have to address what's happening. And I was really shocked to see the FBI go down to Fulton County, Georgia, and do what they did. But where is the outrage about that? You know, we can't just let them do what they want to do, right? Those are my comments.
Thank you, Guy, for those insightful comments.
Wow. I'm glad that people are paying attention to what we see is high level of criminology. We have not seen this level of misconduct before. I've not during my lifetime. I mean, just murdering people in open public, shooting them in the back, you know, just terrible time. But we have some significant health issues also, Marlon. You know, I thought that we had cured America of measles and the mumps. What's going on in that part of the world?
Yeah, this is really just terrible, and your audience, Nathaniel, really needs to be made aware of it. We were on the verge of basically eradicating measles, and not showing our age here. We certainly remember when we had the vaccine and measles was a problem. It's very, very contagious, and it's very dangerous for people that are older. And so, what's happening around the country, with RFK Jr. being head of HHS, he's really causing doubt on a lot of these vaccines and making statements about, certain vaccines are not necessary. The government makes a big deal, a big difference when they make these types of statements. So you have, communities where, parents are not vaccinating their children. And now we have a disease that was eradicated, and now we're seeing an epidemic in South Carolina. And it's spreading across the country. And people have to know that, it's not going to necessarily just be isolated to South Carolina, because a lot of people travel. And this is one of the most contagious airborne illnesses that is out there. And so, if this spreads even further, and and they're talking about it, there may be even a new strain, and those of us that may have been vaccinated as children, there may be a problem as well now with this new strain, so to speak. So it's something that your audience, Nathaniel, needs to be aware of. And I think we really got to get the word out that it's one thing to engage in politics, but we have to look at medicine and look at the facts. And the facts are that through these vaccines, we basically eradicated this ailment, measles, and now you're getting people pushing back, and now you're seeing us at the brink of an epidemic. So it's certainly problematic, and just your audience just needs to read, really look at the facts, and really be careful about listening to some of these charlatans that are out there.
Well, one thing that I need to point out, you pointed out a cabinet member, RFK Jr. What people need to know is that he has significant addiction to heroin and cocaine. And so we have a former addict who heads up health, a person that took drugs that have caused the lives of millions of people. And so now, somehow, since he became sober, he became an expert on health. It's insane, just insane.
With no medical training, Nathaniel. He has no medical training. He's not a doctor. And as your audience will note, that a number of the prior, chairs of HHS Health and Human Services, they not only had a medical background, but they were very distinguished. So he's just spouting off these medical views with no scientific background, no scientific training. So it's certainly very problematic.
And we've seen in 2025, the United States surpassed a milestone in reported measles cases, with 2025 just last year has sustained the most cases since the disease. It was declared it was eradicated, eliminated in the United States in 2000. And last year, we saw the most number of measles cases in more than 3 decades.
Well, it's really sad. Well, moving on, there's so many things that are important that are occurring in America. So let's go to another topic. One thing that Don Lemon that we forgot to mention is that the First Amendment provides certain protections. So reporting the news is highly protected. So it's shocking that any judge will not eventually dismiss this case against Don Lemon, because as a reporter, he has a lot of constitutional protection. And I think that the court's going to follow the law and that those charges will be dismissed. I'm pretty confident that they will, based on what I saw in the video.
Going back to the measles situation as well, what the statistics are uncovering is that nearly all of the cases in 2025 have occurred in those citizens that are unvaccinated or whose vaccination status is unknown. And so, again, it's important uh, to follow the science. And why would we take any chances with a disease that was eradicated by relying on um, this current secretary? Is he the Secretary of Health and Human Services?
Yes,
Yes.
RFK Jr. Yes,
And so
yes,
we're at risk of losing our measles elimination status if the cases continue to increase at this, high rate. And so we know that many of the cases have been in Texas, I believe, but these diseases don't know any state borders. And so hopefully with medical organizations and researchers and others, we can take those actions which will avoid and prevent a epidemic of the measles in this nation. Again, that disease was eradicated, eliminated over 20 years ago.
yeah.
Well,
It's a day.
what?
Go
We
ahead,
don't
sir. Go
have to
ahead.
go very far, Counselor, to know the effects of vaccination. In 2020, we saw the greatest disease process during my lifetime, COVID-19. And, people were dying every day. Locally, the coroner's office had so many dead bodies, they had to get a refrigerated truck to store them, right? But what saved us was the fact that an African American lady developed a remarkable vaccine. And this vaccination process uh, reduced death, saved lives. And I took a shot every chance I could. And so the point is that if you took the vaccination, even if you contracted COVID, it would not have been as severe as we know. And so I'm a big believer in that vaccination because I think, based on my personal knowledge, it saves lives. And so the folks out there, follow the science, follow your medical doctors. Uh, don't listen to a former drug addict in terms of how you should deal with your children vaccination process. That's just my legal advice to you today. Please follow your own medical expert, not a guy who uses snort cocaine and use heroin.
And as you know, Lee and Primes, when we were growing up, there was no question about it. There were certain vaccinations that children had to have before they could even enroll in school. And so this no vaccination movement, which has grown, I don't know to what extent it has grown, but again, follow the science and the recommendations of your personal physicians. I wanted to go back to the issue of the need for legislation. You wouldn't think that you would need to pass legislation dictating that members of ICE or the of Customs and Border Protection would be required not to wear a mask. Number one, would be required to wear uniforms, so they would be able to be identified, to carry ID, to have body cameras, to not be able to storm citizens' homes without, warrants, um, conducting these warrantless, searches, and that they would be required to cooperate with local law enforcement, who, as you know, after George Floyd's death, many police departments across the nation have implemented reforms, either independently and most often through consent decrees, and we're working on a model of community policing, attempting to develop relationships of trust and communication with the communities. What we're witnessing in our own eyes is that many of these ICE officials, they're not adequately trained. They don't have the emotional maturity not to respond to protesters exercising their fundamental rights. They haven't been trained in de-escalation or, crowd control. And as a result, legislation has been introduced to require that they not wear masks, that they have specific uniforms, ID, body cameras, etc., to ensure or help ensure the safety of American citizens.
Well, moving forward, the next issue, Marlon, Benita, there's been some allegation that the federal books are being cooked. What is it? What's going on?
Yeah, one of the things that we were really concerned about is that if you look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, this is really important. It talks about, how many jobs are being created, and, businesses use that data to determine if they're going to hire people. The Federal Reserve uses that information to figure out if they're going to raise or lower interest rates. So what we've seen with this administration is that if they do not like, honest reporting, then they fire the people that are in charge of that reporting. So we had someone that was appointed, actually confirmed by the Senate, and that person was let go. And now there was another person that was put forth to lead that very important position, and then that person withdrew because there was some, concern in the financial community that this person may not, be the best person suited for the job and may not call balls and strikes. And so now they have another individual that is being put forth as a chair of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And so one of the things that really prompted the firing is that there was an adjustment downward in terms of jobs being created, and it was decreased the alleged job creation by the administration by over 800,000 jobs. And so that caused some alarm in the administration. And the answer, at least in their mind, was to, get someone in there to their liking. And that's really a clear and present danger, for our community. I know, Nathaniel, you're a business owner, many of your clients are business owners, and they depend upon honest data from the U.S. Department of Labor, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, to make informed decisions. Do they get a loan? Do they start a new business? Do they hire more people? And if we have individuals in those positions that aren't calling it as, it is, it's certainly a clear and present danger for all of us. So, and the other problem that we want to really kind of go full circle in what, in terms of what, Attorney Banks is talking about in terms of just, having more control over ICE and what have you. It's the same sort of issue as we talk to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We need to have, checks and balances. Right now, Congress is not doing their role of oversight. You're not seeing congressional hearings, regarding these issues regarding Preti. You're not seeing, congressional hearings regarding these issues about the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So, if you believe in the democracy, one of the things that we need to do is just make sure people are registered to vote, so that, there can be a different control of Congress, so that there can, in fact, be oversight. They have subpoena power to, see what people are doing. And that's the danger of having one party rule. So it's great to protest, but it's important that we really register to vote.
One of the things that's important before we get to our next caller, when you said that, Marlon, one of the things that happened under Obama or Biden, we had record levels of employment, record number of jobs, and unemployment rate up to historical lows. Now they're getting pretty high, particularly African America. But here's some key data that should adversely affect the numbers. Amazon announced on January 28th that they're cutting 16,000 jobs, 16,000. UPS, one of the world's largest transit unit, up to 30,000 jobs. Dow, 4,500. Meta, 1,000. Nike, $775. Erickson, 1,600. Citigroup, 1,000. Procter & Gamble, 7,000. Nestle, 16,000. So we have all these major corporations cutting jobs. Now, why is that important? If you're an investor, you got to look at the stock market from time to time. What does that mean? A company cutting jobs to do what? To reduce their expenses, right? And why do they need to reduce their expenses? Usually because their revenue is down. If their revenue is down and they're trying to get rid of folks in order to get back to making profits. So it's a telltale sign, and we need to have accurate information, audience, in this sector more than anything else, because it's going to affect your pensions and your benefits and your savings and investments. So just keep that in mind. Okay, Pierre, you got a question or comment for us today, sir? Go ahead.
Oh, good morning, everybody. Just to carry on that point, I listened to a story on NPR the other day. A lot of young people graduating from college are having a real hard time finding jobs, and it's tough out there. And so they're fudging the numbers. They have to be, because it's rough out there for young people trying to find jobs. Some of the Democrats in Congress held a news conference the other day. I'm looking at the Los Angeles Times, where they say you just can't trust the Justice Department anymore because they're just so corrupt. So when you got Trump loyalists in office and everything, we're in bad shape. We are in bad shape, and I just don't know where it goes from here. I'll get off. You might have another caller calling in, but yeah, you can't even trust the Justice Department anymore.
Okay. Now, Renita, Marlon, do you, in terms of these massive layoffs, are you seeing layoffs being announced in your cities also, or is the economy stable?
Yes, we're seeing that. I mean, right now, I think your audience, Nathaniel, has to understand there's a mass transformation of our society right now with artificial intelligence. A lot of the jobs that were, available, when you and I started practicing, they're no longer available. So it's really important that your audience, especially young people, just really, just concentrate on learning your craft, making sure that you finish high school, going to college. These are going to be requirements in terms of this new economy. Many of our parents were part of the Great Migration and, moved from the South to work at factories in Gary, Indiana, and Cleveland and Akron. And a lot of those jobs just aren't available anymore. So we do have to adjust. So in answer to your question, we're seeing a lot of that, not only in the manufacturing, but now in desk jobs, and now at these large companies such as Amazon, UPS, and Meta, as you mentioned.
Terrible. What about in Chicago, Attorney Banks?
We're seeing the same symptoms. As you know, over 500,000 Black women lost their jobs in last year. And one of the things with respect to artificial intelligence, and I delivered a lecture at Howard University earlier this month. And one of the points that I made to the students is that I'm not so concerned about AI taking people's jobs. I'm concerned about AI will take, let me back up and say that those students and others that master AI will take people's jobs. Do you see that nuance? AI is not going to do it, but we have to be at the table, and we have to, in developing AI policy, and we can't run from AI. We have to adapt to it and embrace it. And again, AI is not going to, take your job, but somebody that has mastered AI will take your job. So that's the kind of advice that I'm giving to students across the country.
Yeah, I agree. We're going to have to understand how it works, especially in the practice of law. I mean, there's so many new tools that, go to organizing your file, doing digesting deposition transcripts, witness testimony, formulating questions. And so if we're going to compete, as lawyers, we're going to have to really understand, how that works. And in fact, the American Bar Association has come out with a relatively new rule that in order to be competent as a lawyer, you have to understand the limits and benefits of AI. And I think that's going to be true across other professions as well.
Absolutely. In the practice of law, one of the things that will be transformative, and we're seeing already, is that AI, again, is a tool, right? Just like any other tool, and that it will level, and we're seeing it leveling the playing field between large law firms and smaller solo practitioner and small firms, because AI enables you to have information at your fingertips, enabling you quickly, of course, to do research as well as to prepare briefs and other pleadings. And again, as drafts, right? You've got to make sure that you check all of your citations. We're also seeing court cases where lawyers are being sanctioned because they're not um, complying with their duty to ensure that the arguments they make and the cases that they raise in their legal briefs are accurate, because we do know that the AI is not perfect and it does hallucinate. And therefore, again, AI is a powerful tool that is currently transforming the legal sector and, all sectors from manufacturing to so every industry sector.
Yeah. Well, one final comment, because we're at the end of our show again. It's been really interesting. There's so many legal issues, and we can't cover them all, but you have to join us next week. But one closing comment that we've been saying over and over again, as we see a decline in democracy, if we're seeing people murdered by government officials, we're seeing constitutional rights being violated by a law enforcement official. The only solution we can do as a citizen is vote. Now more than ever, you see the effects of not voting during a presidential election. We had a very low turnout, particularly among African American males. So gear up. We have upcoming elections in many of our states. We have upcoming election here in Indiana. We have House and Senate members and state races that we're going to make sure that we elect people, and so we can get rid of the supermajority that Republicans currently hold in the legislature. So thank you all for listening to us today, and please join us next Saturday.
Have a great week.